Here we go. Welcome to Double Dribble Bucks. I am Seth Peterson. With me, as always, is my good friend Brett Sand. How's it going tonight, Brett?
It's going great, Seth. I'm looking forward to the playoff series against the Pacers. It is the one that I said I was looking forward to. Not as confident, I guess, as I was a couple weeks ago, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll get into it in this.
Yeah, finally playoff time. It's very exciting. We've had a few play-in games the past couple nights. Any takeaways from the games you've seen the past couple nights here?
So I have been watching them. My first thought was I was actually very impressed with Zion in the game yesterday, even though they lost. I have to say, like for a while, I really didn't get the thing with Zion. Like for a long time, he's kind of like another Blake Griffin. Yeah, great dunks, but I just don't. I guess I just don't get it. Am I missing something? But he was playing really, really well. He had a little bit of this Giannis fast break to him. He apparently leads the league in layups. I don't know if you knew that. But he was playing really, really well. And then it's just a shame to see them go down with a hamstring injury that cost them the game. He's now going to be out for this upcoming game. So we'll see how that impacts. So that was pretty disappointing. Golden State, I mean, you got to touch on the fact that Klay Thompson really just sucked when he really needed to play well. I mean, the guy didn't score a single bucket. He was a complete 0-4 for the entire night. That's disappointing as a free agent. I mean, I just don't know what that means for the guy. Um, and then, tonight, I have to say I was super excited to see Philly win. Number one, because I think Philly, New York is a great matchup. And then if Miami can get past the winner of the game that's on right now, Miami Celtics is going to be a fantastic matchup. And as a Bucks fan, we're going to get rid of one of them. We're either not going to have to worry about Miami or we're not going to have to worry about Boston. And that's pretty nice. I mean, if you're going to have at least some sort of win, I'll take it. In the game right now, Chicago is coming out and they're playing well. Kind of feel like Chicago fans are like, a play-in victory is like their championship, which is pretty sad because they got big long contracts that they can't get out of for a very long time, and if that's the pinnacle of what they are expecting for like a good season, it's going to be a rough time for them for a while. So kind of feel a little bit bad for the Bulls in a way, but hey, maybe they get a win and that's enough for them. I don't know.
Yeah, the Bulls with Caruso are kind of feisty. They can be. That last game of the season with them and the Knicks was a pretty fun game with the double overtime, exchanging baskets, and Caruso, he can be awesome at times. So I still don't think the Bulls are going to do anything here, but
No, I don't think
but yeah,
so.
they have a game here or there, and they have some hardworking players. Hopefully, they don't upset the Heat. I really do want to see the Heat match up with the Celtics. That's what should happen. And the Heat did not have Rozier, so I mean they were missing their starting point guard tonight, and they only lost by 4 points. They had the lead for a lot of that game. So yeah, Miami's always a tough out. I'm sure Boston is not going to be happy if that's what happens.
No, I can't imagine. And Jimmy Butler, looked good. He didn't look unstoppable like he has in the past. He had 5 or 6 assists. A lot of them were based on things that we've touched on before, these like real casual passes that, there's just no passing with authority. It's these little like lobs and, easy pickoffs for him. Definitely some concern. He went down with a knee injury. He did play the whole game, but he was grimacing and holding that knee quite a bit. So we'll be interested to see kind of what comes from that. But Boston, Miami, I think everybody's hoping for it. So no offense to Atlanta or Chicago, but I don't think anybody wants you to win more than one game. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a couple more nights of the play-in game here, and then we're into the real playoffs. Before we get to the Pacers series, I wanted to just kind of take a 10,000-foot overall thoughts on the Bucks season. Quick look at the season. We started 30-13 under Griffin. Fired him, basically player mutiny is kind of what it sounds like to me. Fired him. 2-1 under Prunty. Then we got Doc, finished below 500, 17-19 under Doc, losing 8 of our last 11, I believe. So that's kind of the season in a nutshell. Take it where you want it. What's kind of your overview thoughts on the season, regular season?
I mean, it's obviously disappointing. I think at the beginning of the season, everybody thought that we should have been the Celtics this year, or at least neck and neck with the Celtics. Celtics get Porzingis and Holiday, and they're by far the best team in the East. They look really good. They kind of fill all these holes that they had. And then you got a Bucks team that is just a couple years away from a championship. And, everybody feels like, all right, Dame is a big upgrade. A top 75 player being able to single-handedly take these Trailblazer teams into the playoffs. We should have been right there. But there was just so much going on all year. It's like the coaching change can't be overlooked. I mean, that was, Griffin, his record was great, but as you pointed out, it was like clearly some sort of player mutiny because I just don't think the players wanted to play for him anymore, and that was the bigger factor. It was like the record was there, but that's just a small sample size of kind of what was going on. But I mean, I think right now it's kind of like Doc trying to figure out, what is this team? Where do these players fit? What is the lineup? What is everybody's role? And I think that's something that until even just this most recent game where we lost against Orlando, it was like they're still figuring it out. And it's disappointing because it's not really the time to be figuring it out anymore. And I think it was something that if we would have had Doc all year, we would have had it figured out by the All-Star break at the very least, and then you would have seen a different team. But when you have a new coach at the All-Star break, I mean, I don't even know if there's statistics of how many teams have done something like that, but we're trying to figure it out. And I kind of barrel it down to what is our identity? And I've been looking at it and be like, I don't know if I can even figure out who we are. Is it, you look at some of these teams and it's, do we lack athleticism or are these younger players just that much more athletic? And it's just a new NBA that we're just not used to. Because there are games that we just look old and we look slow. And I think the people that are complaining about the season this year, that's their beef. We just look like we're an old, slow team and we can't compete. And that's the big fear coming up against the Pacers is we're going to get run out of the gym and we're just not going to keep up. But, the thing is, like, we're not old. Yeah, we're in the 30s for a lot of players, and that's really not that old. But I still think we have a ton of experience that we're bringing into the playoffs. And that does factor at least something. You go to the Pacers haven't even been as a team in the playoffs since 2020, 4 years. And that was the COVID tournament.
Yep.
The last time we were there. So most of these guys have no experience. We have an entire roster full of guys that understand what it's like to be in the playoffs. They understand what a 7-game series is all about. So I guess at this point, my comment here is going to be, I'm wondering if Doc is thinking, do I need to rotate more of these young guys in there just for that energy and that athleticism that I'm going to be facing? Or do I stick to the veterans and keep it like a chess game and be like, all right, 7 games. I could lose the first 3 and still win the next 4. Like, it's still possible. You don't want that, but it's the way it is. Game 1, you look at matchups. This isn't working. This is working. You find ways to exploit. I mean, there's not a single person that can look at this season and be like, I'm happy that we got the 3rd seed. Overall, it just seems like a disappointment. What are you thinking about this year?
Looking back, it's really hard to figure it out. I wanted to fire Bud. I'm glad we fired Bud. I just did not trust him in the playoffs, even though he won a championship. It's just so that's kind of an odd take. But I mean, he for sure was going to be fired the year we won the championship if he didn't, or maybe if he didn't get to the championship series or something. But it's funny looking at that. I mean, that was such a grind to get past the Nets. That Nets series was ugly. It was not a fun. I mean, it was a lot of fun, obviously, watching the Bucks win a championship, but a lot of those games were not necessarily fun. And, Drew Holiday wasn't great offensively. It's that playoff series either. So I did want to get rid of Bud. I just wanted a new coach for the playoffs, really. I didn't even care about the regular season. Bud's obviously a great regular season. He has a great system in place. All that was excellent. It's just the playoff matchups, I didn't trust him. So I was fine with that. We hired Griffin. Obviously, it didn't work out. The thing that's weird is we were 30-13. I mean, that's on pace for 57, 58 wins, which is still not as good as the Celtics this year, but, very good. I'm sure everyone would be happy if that's what we had. I believe that would be the second best. 58 wins would be the second best record in the whole league if we had done that. So we were on pace for that, a great record. It just wasn't looking good, and the players obviously weren't happy about it. And that's, you were alluding to, we don't have an identity. And I think that's really maybe the main thing what's going on here is Griffin came in and he wanted to change a bunch of stuff. So we didn't have that same system that Bud had. We didn't just carry it over and play the same way. Griffin seemingly tried to change a lot of things. And then but we still had a 30-13 record. That's kind of the weird part. Then he leaves, Doc comes in. Seems like we kind of went back to some of the stuff that the players wanted to do. At the same time, I do think Doc is putting his own fingerprints on it. One of the things is the doubling and the trapping. So I think there are Doc fingerprints on the defense, and maybe it's just taking them time to figure that out. I mean, playing team defense is really difficult. Like I think NBA players can go out and ball on the offensive end. That's what they've done their whole lives. So I don't think they need so much coaching on the offensive end. I think what really helps is when you need a basket and you need, fourth quarter, like Bobby was upset with Coach Griffin in that playing game against the Pacers, how he wasn't organizing the team. So certainly the coach needs to organize offense, but I think it's easier for players to just ball on offense and do well. While on defense, everyone needs to understand how that team defense is going to work. Where are the rotations? Where do you need to go? And perhaps that's what's going on, is that's been in flux all season. It's changed multiple times, and it's just taking them a while. And they have two new guards. The starting guards were brand new players for the Bucks. Some of the guys off the bench are new. AJ Green, Ajax, they didn't play last year. So that's maybe it. Just a defense that hasn't figured out its identity and hasn't had enough practice and everything to really know how to play together. And sometimes you see it on the court, at least with some of the younger guys like AJ Green sometimes seems lost. So perhaps that's it. But I also don't understand why we were 17-19 under Doc. That's just not good enough. It doesn't make sense.
So do you think that, like, obviously I think everybody, whether it's the organization, the players, the fans, thought it's time to move on from Bud. Like, man, awesome that you won a championship. Like, we're not going to take that away from you. That's fantastic. But something had to change for sure. Everyone, there was just like a general feeling. So do you think that Griffin was making drastic changes and it just wasn't vibing with the team, and Doc is trying to fix what Griffin did? Or do you think that Griffin was like, there's not a lot to change, but the things he was changing the teams didn't like, and when Doc is coming in, Doc is the one that's making the bigger changes? If you had to choose one of the two, where do you think we're at right now?
I almost think that Doc is making more changes and the team is responding, and they're doing it, and they're trying to do it, and it takes time for them to effectively do it. Under Griffin, they told Griffin, no, we're not doing that. We're going to do it the old way, which is, what Bud told us to do. We were super successful at it. We're just going to do that. And so, yeah, maybe you're hitting on something as to why we were able to carry that over to a good regular season. We were playing well. They were just playing the way they used to play. And then Doc came in and they respected him, and they're like, okay, yeah, let's try to change some of these things. Perhaps that's true, although the defense was ranked, I think 19th when Griffin was fired. And that doesn't really line up with like a Bud defense. I'm sure if Bud was the coach, we would not have been 19th. That'd be very surprising. So I'm not sure. It's hard to nail down.
I think you're right. And I think it's, I think Griffin was probably, as a veteran team, he just didn't have the voice of the locker room. Anything he was doing, it just didn't seem like it fit. Griffin, I hope he has a chance to coach again at like a younger team where it's like, hey, we're going to try this. We're going to implement it from the beginning, and this is what we're going to do. But that's the problem with the hire when you look back to it. It's like, okay, this is a veteran team. They're used to playing certain ways and doing certain things. You can't have someone that comes in there that, I mean, you can have someone come in that changes it, but you have to have some respect behind it. A first-time head coach is not going to have that. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. You should have made the decision to hire Doc at the beginning and be like, all right, fix the things that we were having that was broken. Because, I mean, we've talked about this before. The single fact that Brooke was like, I'm not going to play out on the the wing when I'm a low post defender. Like, I'm just not doing it. It's like, okay, well, he's not saying that to Doc, because when Doc says it, he goes, you can do that. And that's what you are going to do if you're going to get minutes. And he's like, all right, I guess I'm going to do it. But with Griffin, he's just like, no. And so that was like a big swing and a miss. And, I think we would have a different team if Doc was here earlier on. Let's just hope we get some run. I mean, Doc has a tremendous record. If you really look at it, I mean, everyone's going to look back and say, he's had all these failures, and, look, that's, if that's the type of people you want to be, and you want to just look at people's failures and that's how you define them. Okay, so be it. So Doc's not going to have us win. We're going to get swept, and we're going to just be a crappy team for the rest of your life. And this Bucks team, we just wasted Giannis's career, and Lillard is just overrated, and, might as well just move the franchise at this point because we're just done. Or you can have some optimism that you have a Hall of Fame coach that knows what he's doing. He's had very little time to do it. And you got some players that have clearly bought in and just have to execute. I don't know. I think I'd like to be in the other camp of let's see what we can do. I'm going to be overly optimistic about it. But the number of Bucks fans I've seen that have just been like, bury this team, it's over, we're never going anywhere, is just, I don't know, mind-boggling to me. I can't understand it.
Yeah, there's 3 things I can point to that give me hope. One is Middleton was hurt. He missed 27 games. Almost all of that was in this Doc tenure, the 17 and 19 stretch. I still don't think that alone should cause us to have that bad of a record. He's our 3rd best player. We have Giannis and Dame still on the court for many of those games, and we should be able to withstand that better than 500. We also, Giannis and Dame each missed 9 games. I think a good chunk of those were the second half of the season. So still overall, I would like it to be better than 17 and 19, but it makes sense that we had some trouble in the second half. We didn't have a cohesive team essentially that whole time. One guy was out or the other guy was out. The 3 of them only played together, I think 8 games. So that's one thing where hopefully if they can stay healthy in the playoffs here and get healthy, and then if they're all playing together, maybe it's a different team. On that point, the second thing I looked at is our starting lineup is the best in the league. The numbers show that. So, and if you change Beasley out for Pat Bev, like I don't think that matters, honestly. I think it's Dame, Giannis, Middleton, Lopez, and then just anybody.
You're right. Yeah.
So I like that. That lineup has been outstanding. Just those 4 guys have been outstanding. Just Dame, Giannis, Middleton. Look at those numbers. So if those guys play and it's the playoffs, you'd think they'd play more minutes. How many can they play and still be as effective and have the energy? Hopefully they can go 40 minutes plus. And so that does change things. When you have those guys in for most of the game, you're not relying on those second units where usually that's where we're getting killed. The third thing that I looked at was we have been good against good teams. So that also means we've been bad against bad teams, but we're playing good teams in the playoffs. So yeah, I don't know if that's just human nature, just kind of getting up for games that matter. And the slog of the regular season has really gotten to these veterans on this team who've been there in the playoffs year after year. They are just playing for the playoffs, most of these guys. So perhaps that's it. That's still not great. You'd like to see him just be dominant, but they were so 17 and 19 under Doc, but 9 and 7 against top 10 net rating teams. So a winning record against teams that had a top 10 net rating. And under Griffin, I believe we were 6 and 6 with Griffin. So first of all, we played tougher competition under Doc as well, but we did better than a 500 record against them. So that's encouraging. So there are some encouraging things. If we can stay healthy, we do have one of the best teams in the NBA. That's what everyone said before the season. Even though our record hasn't been great, the season has proven that starting lineup is one of the best, if not the best, in the NBA. So hopefully they can go out and prove that to everybody.
I mean, as we move into this Pacers series, there's not a chance that anybody's wanting to play the Bucks. I mean, the Pacers can feel that way, but they're also a young, inexperienced team. Of course, they're going to say they're going to want the Bucks. But I think at the end of the day, I can't imagine a lot of teams really want to face the Bucks early on. Maybe because Giannis is out, they want to do that. But they're a dominant team. When I look at this Pacers matchup, number one, from a Bucks side, it's revenge time. You got embarrassed this year, straight up embarrassed. 4-1. You lost in the
Play-in
NBA
tournament?
Cup or tournament, whatever
Or
they
not
ended
play-in.
up calling it.
In season.
In season tournament. So it's time to show some revenge for that. But the biggest thing is you kind of pointed on it is the regular season truly meaningless? Because it kind of might be. And I think that's the big knock on the NBA nowadays is, the Bucks were almost seemingly cursed when they would have the number one seed. And, there's a lot of these matchups where you look at all right, look at Miami last year, or even possibly this year. It's like, as long as you get into the conversation of the playoffs, that's really all that matters. That's when things kind of have to come together. So, I get it. You want to have the best record and you want to look great and you want to have all these things going down. But when you really are at crunch time, that's really all that matters is, can you put it all together when it matters? And that's just the thing. It's like Chris Middleton would be the number one on a lot of teams, and he's our number 2 or 3 depending on what kind of night Dame's having.
Yeah.
So that's great. Brook Lopez single-handedly ran the Brooklyn Nets for years, and he's our fourth option. It's like you nailed it. We have a fantastic team. Let's put it all together when it really counts. Getting into this Pacers matchup too, we are facing Tyrese Halliburton. But what Tyrese Halliburton are we going to be facing? That's the big question. Mm-hmm. It's the beginning of the year, MVP candidate, supermax contract guy. Oh my gosh, they got really like a diamond in the rough here. This is huge. He gets hurt, All-Star break, comes back. He's just a good guy. He's just a good player. He's nobody to fear as of right now. As an offense, they put up a lot of points, and a lot of people are going to look at the very last game. They put up 157 points, I think, against Atlanta. But it was 157 points. Mm-hmm. I know they put it up. So that's the biggest thing. But, you kind of touched on it as well. Doc has changed the defensive strategy of the Bucks. We have a way better defense than we had before under Griffin. I am not going to be shocked to see Pat Bev starting for the Bucks in that series. Put him on Halliburton, kind of get him in his head, get him slowed down. I think Lopez can take on Siakam. I'm not too worried about that. Siakam, is he an elite defender? I don't know. Maybe he is. I mean, there's games where he certainly looks the part, but in a full series, I don't know. When he's in Toronto, he had really, really great times. The Pacers, I feel like it's another thing. The Pacers kind of have a group of guys that work, but a little bit like the Bucks, I don't know how well they work together. And that's what I'm really looking forward to this series is the Bucks on paper should have an absolutely dominating team, and they got the 3rd seed. On the other side, you got the Pacers that look like they have a very good young dominating team, but just haven't really figured it out. So what's going to happen when we get in these playoffs? I'm super excited about it. I still obviously feel the Bucks are going to win it. I'm really excited for that first game. I think we need to get a win without Giannis there to get just kind of get the fans back on the same page. We've talked about this Facebook group that I follow before, and it's just full of trolls, full of people that are just giving up hope. Getting that first win, I think, would make a huge difference in this playoff run for sure.
Yeah, it's a fun series because you alluded to it where the Pacers dominated the Bucks. They beat us 4 out of 5 times. But the last time we played them was January 3rd. The Bucks have a new coach. The Pacers have Siakam and no longer have Bruce Brown. They have McDermott instead of Hield. Hield's on the Sixers actually now. The coaching change is the huge deal with the Bucks. We also have Pat Bev instead of Campaign. So both teams are different teams, really pretty different teams now. Obviously, both teams made moves to get better, but yeah, we'll see. And we'll also see how that changes the matchup. Because like we were saying before, the Griffin defense was pretty bad, and it was especially bad against a team like the Pacers that just kind of flew by them. So that's one thing that's really interesting is they haven't played in forever and the teams are different. A couple other things I noticed is that the Pacers and the Bucks are tied for net rating. They're tied for 10th with plus 2.7. So very similar. They've ended the season at a very similar point. I guess we'll find out who the better team is, or if one of them beats them 4-1. But on paper, end of the season net rating, they're actually tied. So that was kind of interesting to see. And then this really surprised me. I think I might have mentioned this before, where the Milwaukee starting lineup, the one with Beasley, of course, because the one that's played a lot, is actually the best defensive lineup. If you look at defensive rating, the best defensive lineup for any lineup with more than 600 possessions. So they're better than Boston. They're better than Denver's top lineup. They're, any great defense team that you can think of, the Bucks have a better starting lineup than their best lineup. So that was surprising. But more surprising, Indiana's starting lineup, the one with Siakam, is the second best. I would never. Wow. Everyone criticizes Indiana's defense, right? And their defensive rating was 24th in the league, so pretty bad. And the Bucks is 19th, so neither team has a good defensive rating. Both teams have very good offensive ratings, but for some reason, the starting lineups have had really pretty good defense. So that was surprising to me.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like the bench is really going to be a huge factor in this. I honestly don't recall the Pacers bench very well. I mean, I know they got McConnell, who's just a really good defender, brings a lot of energy. He's a guy that I do respect his game. It's kind of like a Alex Caruso comes in, where it's like you're not winning an MVP. You're not going to be probably a first team NBA guy, but you have to respect when they're out there. They bring a lot to it. But that's the thing. It's like, you watch enough Bucks games this year. We start out great. And that goes to the, starting lineup, and we end games pretty well when it's close. The problem is we're getting back to those Bud days where the third quarter fell apart. And that was always the big knock, where, we would make jokes where it's like, what is Bud saying in the locker room that they come out and just like shit the bed immediately? It's like, you're up 10 points and you're down 13 at the end of the third. What the hell were you talking about in the locker room? With Griffin, I think it was the opposite. The third quarter was like, we were fired up and we were coming out swinging, and this was awesome. But it's funny. We talked about this a couple pods ago, that the NBA is different even in this season. The third quarter, we were putting over 95 points a game, and ending well over 100 easily. And now you're in an NBA where that's just not happening. I mean, in the Miami Philly game today, in the end of the third quarter, I think it was like 74. I mean, that's a kind of low scoring game, it seems like it. So we'll see. I mean, I think that Doc is figuring out some lineups that make a little more sense. I don't love Bobby starting. We kind of touched on this. Love Bobby Portis, but he brings something coming off the bench. Starting the game, it's just not the same. I'd like to avoid that as much as possible. I'd like to maybe see some different starting lineups that he can throw out there. I don't know what that is, but I think you need Bobby coming off the bench, bringing that energy. I'd love to see a lineup where maybe he has Bobby, Pat, and Ajax coming in at the same time. Talk about something that's really going to bring some energy. If we're up, that's just going to add to it. And if we're down, I think those are three guys that could really make a significant impact.
Well, let's jump into it. I had 6 things I put down as 6 things that I wanted to watch. Part of this was I looked at the 5 games we played against him and some of the stats there. So some of this comes from that, and some of it's kind of the changes in the teams. But the first thing that I think we need to watch is the points in the paint. The Pacers won that points in the paint battle 3 out of the 5 games. And I was kind of surprised to see they're actually first in the league in scoring points in the paint. But they're also last in the league in defending against points in the paint. So that's probably why they only had 3 out of the 5 games. And the Bucks too. The Bucks take a lot of threes. Like I know that, but I didn't realize quite how many they take. They actually take the 4th most 3-pointers of any team in terms of the percentage of their offense. So that's a bit more than I thought. Boston was number 1, like we would assume. So I think because of that, the Bucks points in the paint is not as high, because we were actually 26th in the league points in the paint. So I was kind of
Well,
surprised at that with how much Giannis is scoring down there, right? I mean,
yeah,
Giannis is
yeah,
not a
that's
mid-range
surprising.
guy. He's not a three-point guy. So I didn't dive deeper into it, but it's like, how many points in the paint are we getting outside of Giannis? Uh, I guess almost none. It seems like not much at all. That's kind of interesting. So that's something to watch. Shooting at the rim is a huge part of the Pacers' offense. They're third in the league in terms of the percentage of their offense that's shots at the rim, which obviously leads to all the points in the paint. So how do the Bucks win that battle? Should they turn their focus to other aspects? Or should they just give up that? Should they just give it up? Indiana's going to get more points in the paint. That's fine. Or should they focus on that and try to win that battle? And how do you think they should approach that?
Well, I think we've had a lot of success with our zone defense in our dock, and I think that's something that maybe you kind of play around with because the points in the paint, it's not big guys that are doing like a Zach Edey, posting up and getting these little baskets. It's quick guards that are doing quick layups or dunks. The transition offense that they had is a huge thing that we have to talk about because I'm sure that's probably on your list, but that has to be a significant factor into kind of what was going on. Having Brooke maybe stay in the paint a little bit, Bobby especially. Right now when you're man to man, I mean, you're pulling these big guys out, and that's causing some problems. So I would try to keep some of the big guys in the paint a little bit. Shut down this transition offense from Indy. In the little bit of games that I've seen that weren't against the Bucks, that's still something big they rely on. And I think that's where I would start it is maybe play a little more zone than we had before.
Yeah, we'll see. And I think he seems to like to play zone with AJ Green. So if AJ Green's in there to spread the court and hit some threes, hopefully, perhaps you see more of that in that situation. Yeah, one thing I thought just from looking at those stats is Indiana being last in the league and defending against points in the paint, and maybe the Bucks should put some focus on getting to the rim. And I think what might help with that is starting Pat Bev instead of Beasley, where Pat Bev's cutting to the rim, like we saw that we mentioned that whatever game that was, where he cut to the rim and got those two easy layups, where Beasley would probably just be sitting at the perimeter waiting for a spot up three. So I think maybe they should kind of be thinking about that. Obviously, they need to spread the court. They're not going to completely change how they play the game, but more penetration, aim penetrating, and hopefully not just throwing up shots, hoping to get fouled. Hopefully making layups, making good passes, and yeah, just good cuts to the rim and trying to. Obviously, there's a weakness there on the Pacers' defense, so I think trying to exploit that makes a lot of sense. The other end of it is just on defense. Perimeter defense has been a problem all season. Again, hopefully Pat Bev is helpful there. Beasley was averaging, again, in those 5 games, Beasley averaged 32.2 minutes per game. So he was getting a ton of minutes under Griffin. Before we had this pod, I was complaining about it all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was, all those Pacers games, he's getting a ton of minutes. And so that will very likely change. I'd be very surprised if Beasley's getting 30 plus minutes. So I wonder how much of an effect that will have. And especially if Pat Bev is getting a decent amount of those minutes, can he defend better on the perimeter and not allow Halliburton to just get into the lane? The other thing was Crowder. He was hurt for most of those games, so we didn't really see him play against Indiana. I feel like he's probably a liability, so I'm afraid of playing Crowder. So I'm that's another thing I'm kind of watching for here. I'm curious how much time Crowder is going to get and how he's going to do. But he might help with points in the paint, kind of bullying guys. But in general, I'm kind of afraid of Crowder in the series.
I normally would agree with that, but I feel like I'm starting to see, the NBA's got a great commercial on is like playoff mode a thing. I don't know if you've seen that. And it's all these NBA players. They're like, no, it's not a thing. Not a thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Crowder's starting to get into some playoff mode. I have to say, it's like the last couple of games, if you just kind of isolate Crowder, they're setting up plays for him. The players trust him to make these shots. And for the most part, he's hitting them. His defense seems to be better. His rebounding seems to be better. I don't know what is changed with him, but he seems to be a more complete player than a lot of what we were seeing. And yeah, he was hurt and maybe he didn't understand his place, but I mean, there was a reason we gave up 10,000 second round picks for him. And hopefully it's starting to make sense now. I feel like even though I'm not going to go as far as to say that I trust him at all, I still agree with you completely. I feel like he's definitely somebody that I feel looks way better now than he did a couple months ago. And that gives me some optimism because, um, that's the biggest thing as a team. Do I feel like we look better than we did a couple months ago? No, but there are individual people that are doing things better than before, and that gives me optimism. I mean, we've already talked about PC under Doc challenged him and said, you're a better player than this, do these things, and I feel like we've seen PC deliver. Crowder, I feel like is starting to step up. He's not having a big Crowder game, which is fine. I don't need that. I mean, I need 10 to 12 points, and I need you to contribute on defense. And I feel like that's what we're starting to see, and I hope that's something that continues.
Yeah, he'll definitely be in the rotation, I'm sure, initially. And the question is, will he and should he last? If by game 4, 5, whatever we're at, is he a DNP? Yeah, I feel like that's a possibility. And I guess if he's not playing well, I want that. Hopefully Doc's open to doing that if he's not, if it's not a good matchup for him. Maybe the next series he's playing 25 minutes a game, whatever it is. But to your point, yeah, I think he will get the chance, and hopefully he steps up and is able to run around and get back in transition and do those kinds of things. So the next thing to watch that I had on here was rebounding. Bucks are 8th in the league. Good rebounding team, especially defensive. Really, actually not a great offensive rebounding team. The Pacers are bad. They're 28th in the league. But yet, the Pacers out-rebounded the Bucks 4 out of the 5 games that we played against them. Are you surprised with that fact? And how can the Bucks turn that around?
I'm very surprised with that. I mean, so the Pacers are 28th in offensive or defensive rebounding. What was the stat?
That was just overall rebounding. I don't have the defensive. I do have the Bucks are the 3rd best defensive rebounding team.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this is, in the games that we were playing, which, they were with Griffin, I felt like we were launching way more threes than we did with Doc. I mean, Doc, I feel like we have better plays. Lillard is definitely, making plays at the basket more than just shooting threes, which is, I think, what he was doing under Griffin. And I think, when you get a bad shot that gets a rebound, the rebound goes deep. It's not in the paint, and you get that, and you make a good transition pass, and next thing you know, that's where you're getting beat. And that is not surprising because I feel like that's exactly what the Pacers are doing. But I think, like, we do have a different, system under Doc, and I feel like that's something that will change. I feel like we're going to be able to exploit that a little bit more because we do have the size. We do have guys that want the rebound. I mean, number one, Bobby wants the rebound. Give me the ball. That's mine. And if he's not getting it, PC is right there to be like, it's mine. They're fighting more than anybody.
Yeah.
And I feel like Brooke is kind of setting into his ways as well. There's a lot of times where he's fighting for that rebound. He gets it, and he's okay being the last guy up the court. Whereas other games, I would see him trying to keep pace with some of the guys to get up the court, try to establish position. Sometimes you don't have to. Like, you can be the big guy that's the last guy to come up the court because you got that rebound for us to get us where we need to go. So very surprised with the stat, but I think I have some optimism going in that I think that's something that we should be able to exploit when the series actually starts.
Yeah, the Pacers actually give up a lot of second chance points. They're 26th in the league, and the Bucks are 4th best at scoring putback baskets. So we are a bad offensive rebounding team, but if we can put some focus on that, that might be a way for us to dominate. If we can get some of those offensive rebounds, and if we're shooting less threes, to your point, maybe we're getting more offensive rebounds. If we're cutting to the basket more, we're there to get a rebound, and we're not just sitting at the perimeter, not able to get an offensive rebound. So again, probably tough to change completely how you play. But yeah, if they put some focus on that, I think that really could turn that around and not just be not just be rebounds, but lead to immediate putback points for the Bucks.
Yeah, I think so for sure. It's under earlier, with Griffin or some of the earlier games, you would have guys shooting a three, and it seemed like 4 of the 5 guys were just watching it the whole time. With Doc, you kind of know that you have your rebounders, a Bobby and a PC, a Lopez, that are going to stick around a little bit more. Everyone else is moving on. I mean, not many, Beasley, Crowder, Dame, they're typically coming back because they're like, I'm not getting the rebound. Maybe they just don't want it, or maybe that's the way it's designed. But I'm seeing the scheme change. I think that's going to be a big factor that should impact kind of that statistic.
Yeah, the third one I had was, it's not transition, but it's related to that. The third one I had was turnovers. The Pacers won the turnover battle in 4 of those 5 games. The Bucks and the Pacers are about the same with turnovers per game for the season. So it's not like the Pacers are much better than the Bucks at that, generally speaking. Although the Bucks are the worst team in the league at forcing turnovers, which I was a little surprised they were that far down, but that's where they are. So considering they have been pretty bad at forcing turnovers, any thoughts on what the Bucks can do here to win the turnover battle?
We have to be a little more aggressive. I mean, we talked a little bit about how Jimmy Butler looked today. The way that he was getting steals just had a different level to the way that he was seeing the game. They would have times where Embiid was posting up and they were double teaming him, and you could see him just kind of like look over and be like, this is the opportunity to go for the steal. And it worked. He was able to swipe it right from him because Embiid is a very good player, but he's not a ball handler. He can dribble and he's fine to dribble the ball, but he's not going to be great at preventing you from stealing. And Jimmy Butler knew that and was able to exploit that. I think that's something that the Bucks are missing. They don't have that aggressive approach to going for the steal. There's a big risk for that. I get it, because if you go for the steal and you miss, in that scenario, if Butler goes for it and Embiid sees it, well, now Butler's player is wide open for a three, and you're going to have to see what happens with that. But, when you're in the playoff mode, I think the Bucks need to be a little bit more aggressive, find the right guys to go for that. And that might just be the guy that we've been, hyping up all year, put Ajax out there. He's the type of guy that can sacrifice his body. He's got the quickness. He's got some length. Even Beauchamp has the length to do that type of stuff, to be more aggressive in trying to get these turnovers, as long as they know to, like, all right, your job is to do that, and everybody else is to kind of like get your back. But when you have some of these veterans on there that, I don't want to go back to what we were saying at the beginning, that they're slow, because that's not the case, but they're a little more focused on defending their guy versus trying to get the turnover. And I think that might be some of the benefit of having those youthful guys out there that are more aggressive and can kind of take a chance and see what happens, because that is what we need. I mean, being dead last, that has to be somebody on that coaching team that's like, we got to be more aggressive. And I think that's maybe potentially how you solve it with the youth.
Yeah, and another thing that might help, kind of on the flip side, on the not turning it over part of things, I think if they have a more organized offense, and it's not just, Giannis just going one-on-one with no set plan, no screens, and working around, and because sometimes he just kind of goes right at him and gets a charge, or he'll fumble the ball and lose it. And so if there's not organization on offense, I think that will lead to more turnovers. So hopefully it's playoff time, they're more mentally ready for this. It's not just, one of 82 regular season games, and they're able to do that, for most of the 48 minutes, kind of be focused and obviously take care of the ball. So that's one side of it. Yeah. On the defensive side, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we have a lot of old guys playing a lot of minutes, and they're just half step slower and whatever it is. So yeah, they're probably not getting quite as many steals. I think Lillard is pretty decent at poking the ball away. He can get a couple here and there. Pat Bev might help, him in place of Beasley. I don't know the numbers there, but it seems like Pat Bev would force more turnovers. He just kind of forces chaos sometimes. And especially with playoffs. I mean, I remember watching Pat Bev on those Clippers teams just in the past. I mean, he's going to be ready. He's going to, I think, take it up a notch from what he normally is. So yeah, hopefully a collection of all those things adds up to us winning the turnover battle. And I think the important thing there is, like you said before, if we're losing the turnover battle, we're giving up more fast break points and more transition and semi-transition, and we haven't been great there. So yeah, we want to limit their opportunities.
It's we talked about passing before. It was even evident in some of these other games. There's just too many passes that are just these like non-committal. They're kind of lobbing it in, and there's too many games. I mean, that Miami game, Miami was getting so many turnovers off of Philly by Philly just kind of like these little touch passes instead of like actually kind of forcing it where you need it to be. Those are the types of things that I think you need to avoid. Pass with some purpose, I guess. Damian Lillard made a comment that I love and hated at the same time. I don't know if you saw it, but he said that I'm going to teach these guys how to win in the playoffs. And it was interesting because it was like, hell yeah, I love you. I love you saying that. It's great. You've been able to lead some teams that didn't have a lot of firepower behind it. But then I was like, well, wait a minute. Most of these guys won a championship. Like, for the most part, we have the same team. You haven't won shit, and so we shouldn't have to rely on you to teach us how to win. Like, we should be teaching you what works. But I still like the energy. I still like the firepower. That is what we need. We can't just go in there and be like, hey, look, we've done it before. I mean, you could be the stat guy that's like, all right, well, the last time the Bucks were the 3rd seed, they won it all. Well, yeah, that happened to be the case, but we've also been the 3rd seed a couple other times in our lives that we didn't win it all. So let's not just rely on that one time. It's getting that energy. It's getting those guys like ready to go. I'm really hoping that we see Dame time in the sense that he's fired up, ready to go. And to my earlier comment, maybe the regular season just doesn't matter. Maybe it's just kind of figuring stuff out and just get a playoff berth. That's all you really care about, truly.
Yeah. Well, sticking with Dame, one of the things to watch I had on here was Dame versus Halliburton. And looking at those 5 games, Halliburton averaged 27 points on 53% shooting. He was 37.5% from 3. Dame, in 4 games, because he missed one, averaged 20 points on 32% shooting overall, 26% from 3. So Dame was bad and pretty much all those games per game, but per game he was terrible. And Halliburton was great. And Halliburton was great that whole first 3 months of the season. So what can the Bucks do to turn the tables here? Or is it as simple as Dame just needs to play better?
Dame obviously needs to play better. He knows that. Everybody knows that. It's the elephant in the room. But one of the commentators today was talking about how we got to get past this, and you're going to love this foul gate that's playing in the NBA.
Oh,
every guy is just trying to get the foul instead of taking clean shots. And, Kyle Lowry, an old vet, was doing that. At one point, they had a total breakaway. He had a wide open, but he tried to get the foul instead of just getting the easy bucket. Luckily, he had some guys that were trailing him, and they were able to. He missed the shot, didn't get the foul. It could have been a total break of a play, but other guys were there. It's like, I need Dame to be out there and focus on scoring instead of getting fouls called on other guys, because the reality is Halliburton doesn't foul out too easy. So don't try to make that part of the game, because that's not going to happen. Take high percentage shots. Take the shots that are going to be there. When you're feeling good, yeah, take the shot. I mean, you look at Dame in the All-Star game. When he was feeling it, he felt he could take a shot from anywhere, and he was hitting them, and it worked. But in some of these other games, he's still forcing some shots. He's trying to bring us back. All right, well, maybe take a better shot or find somebody else that's open. And then when you start to feel it, then open it up. But he has to play better. He has to live up to this guy that we want it to be. The stats can show one thing. The eye test for everybody else is something else. He's got to be better. Stop worrying about getting the fouls. The fouls will come as long as you are just taking the shots that make the most sense. That's what I need to say about that.
Yeah, completely agree with that. Maybe the thing to add is hopefully there's more pick and roll. Not sure how much we were seeing that. A lot of complaining about that the first few months with Griffin. So I'm guessing that that's happening a lot more with Doc. I know there's been a few games where it's happened a ton with Doc. So that is probably a difference with this series compared to the 5 times we played against them. And hopefully that helps Dame get into a rhythm and gets, like you said, some better shots, high percentage shots. So that's kind of the main difference that I might see them do here. The other thing is, in terms of Halliburton, maybe Pat Bev gets in his head a little bit, just plays better defense. So maybe we don't let Halliburton get off quite as much. It's probably too much to ask, but that is a difference there, at least with Pat Bev being on the roster, first of all, and secondly, getting some decent minutes.
I would give a lot of credit to Doc if he does. One of the things that I've been kind of, shouting all year is put some of these guys that aren't getting a lot of minutes on their star players and see what happens. Start the game with Pat Bev and be like, I want you to be all over Halliburton. I want you to just be in his ear. I want you to be frustrating him. And the moment you're tired, Ajax, you go and you do the same thing. And if either one of you get in foul trouble, Beauchamp, you're coming in and that's your role. Like, I don't want you to score. I don't want you to do anything else. If you get fouls, you get fouls. But annoy the hell out of this guy, get in his head, get him frustrated, and let everybody else figure it out. It seems like one of those things where it's like, how does it seem so easy to me and it doesn't make sense to anybody else? It's like you have guys that literally Ajax, give him his fouls and get out of the game. But in that as long as he's not making dumb fouls and he's fouling the guy that we want him to be on, that's half the battle. And I really, really hope to see something like that. Because, Halliburton is going to want to do these situations where he gets switched off onto Lopez and tries to, go past him, or he's going to try to go past someone slower or something like that. Just put someone to be like, just annoy the guy. It's what we did with PJ Tucker and Durant. Durant still played well, but PJ Tucker was in his face, slowed him down. It impacted him quite a bit. We had to put, Durant into, overtime with his minutes, and he made a silly mistake of stepping on the line that ended up winning the game. That's all you needed to do. So put these guys out there and impact. Put them on Halliburton. Put them on Donovan Mitchell if we're playing against Cleveland. Put him against Brunson if you're playing. Like, that's just, oh my God, it just seems so simple to me.
I really like that idea. The downside is you don't have a guy spreading the court, so you have either Pat Bev or Ajax and Giannis on the court where they don't have to guard him at the perimeter. Supposedly, for sure, Pat Bev and Giannis, they're just going to let him shoot, and we can hit the shots, and then it works for us, but. Statistically speaking, Pat Bev hasn't been great. I think Ajax actually has been okay at shooting threes, but he probably hasn't had enough of them to really know. But that's the dilemma there is you're not spreading the court. Now it's congesting the paint and the offense isn't as good. And Giannis can't do what he wants to do. Dame can't penetrate as often. So that's the struggle there. But I agree with you. Like, let's do that at least some of the time, and let's definitely give Ajax some minutes to give Pat Bev a rest. If they're killing us, if Halliburton is just going off, what did he shoot? 53%, I think I said.
Yeah, I think that's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was like, that's over 5 games. Like we got to slow him down. If that's what's happening, we need to slow him down. And rather than get in this shootout, especially in the playoffs, and especially Indiana. I mean, they have had a better offense than the Bucks this season. So yeah, I think that's a good strategy. I doubt that'll completely happen, but hopefully we see some of that.
Yeah. I mean, all we can do at this point is hope that there's some plan in place. And then I trust Doc enough to do that. I don't know. He's too veteran to be able to not see it. I think. I mean, you can't have just 2 guys with a podcast being like, "Hey, this is what we should do," and it's like, "Oh, I've never thought about that." I mean, we know Doc listens, and so maybe that's what he's just going to be like, wow, this is just going to change my mind. But I don't know. You got to have some faith that he's going to figure some stuff out for the playoffs here.
Yeah, and my 6th point was Beasley. And if Beasley is not hitting shots, then what's the point of him being out there? It's like, if he's not hitting shots, then definitely let's put Pat Bev or Ajax or whoever. But yeah, with Beasley, he shot 41.4% from 3 for the year. Very good, obviously. If you look at it per month, the first couple of months, October, November, 45%, December, 51%, January, 42%, February, 46%, March, April, 32%. So he just kind of fell off a cliff there. I mean, almost the whole season, over 42%. And then March, I don't know what happened, down to 32. That is what Pat Bev is shooting right now. And so that's probably why he lost that starting spot. I'm sure they looked at it and it was, a month of Beasley being off, and they were just like, we can't handle this anymore. Let's try Pat Bev. So yeah, that's not going to work. And, shooting can be a streaky thing. But that is kind of odd that it just fell off at the last month and a half there. So what do you think? Can he get it together for the playoffs? And if not, how much of a leash does Doc have on him? Like, is he only getting like 5-10 minutes if he's not hitting his first couple threes, or what do you think is going to go on with his minutes?
I do think he's going to be able to put it together. Number one, we've talked about this before. He is going for a new contract. That's got to be in his head somewhere. He has the skill to be able to put up good numbers. I think the leash is it's not long, but it's not short. And I know that's a kind of a cop-out answer, but it's going to be if let's say we allow Beasley to take 20 shots a game on average. That's, because I mean, sometimes these coaches look and say each player gets a certain number of shots that we're going to let him play. And just for example, if Beasley typically gets 20, if he's, I don't know, 0 for 8, that's the leash. That's it. Like you're out for a little while. Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of like that we're about halfway to the number of shots that we would let you have. You're not feeling it. Like that's it for me. Like it's not going to be so short where it's like you're 0 for 4 and you're out. Nope. Like we're going to give you a couple more shots. We're going to give you opportunities to figure this out, but not that much more than that. I mean, you can't be going, I don't know, 1 for, there was a stat we had before, 1 for 7. And I know it kind of plays into the opposite of what I was just saying, but 1 for 7 is not great. If you're getting 20 shots, you're at 1 for 7. We expect you to get, 2 for 10 in that scenario. Like that's just not happening. So it's that mid to short range, and he's got to be a scoring specialist for us. I think he's, we talked about before that Doc maybe has figured out that he doesn't owe Beasley anything. Beasley doesn't have to be in the starting lineup. He has to be able to perform. I'm not going to be overly shocked if we see PC starting one of these games against Indy, to be honest. Especially if we end up seeing ourselves down 0-2. I think we're going to see something different there. But I don't know. I mean, I do think Beasley's going to find some way to turn it around. But yeah, mid leash for him.
Mid leash
coming up.
Yeah, I mean, part of that whole scenario is you have AJ Green there, who's basically does the same thing. AJ Green's shooting 42% on the season. Didn't really play much under Griffin, so I don't know if those numbers even really matter that much. But in February, he shot 47%. March, April, he shot 40%. So he has been consistently good since he's been playing. And he does the same thing in terms of spreads the court, pretty much as a catch and shoot, spot up shooter, not really penetrating or playmaking really much at all. Both have the same defensive role. So I'm curious if how much AJ Green plays, Beasley and Green, like even certain games, like I could see Green getting more minutes, which didn't really happen this season, for the most part. So yeah, that's another thing I wanted to watch for and kind of see what happens there. I mean, hopefully Beasley can come out of this slump and shoot 45, 50%. That'd be great. That's what I want to see.
Great. Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll see how Doc handles that. Okay. Who's going to win the series? How many games is it going to go?
I'm not going to not pick the Bucks. I mean, that's just a given. But it's going to be 6 or 7. Obviously the buzzy way to do it would be Bucks and 6 because that's just what we do. But it's going to be 6 or 7 in my opinion. I would be completely floored if we got swept. I would also be completely floored if we swept them. It's going to be a battle. I think that one of those first 2 games we have to get a win, or it's going to be a bigger challenge. And I think we will. I really think that game 1 we're going to come out with a win. I feel pretty confident about that. Game 2 we'll just see how that goes. That's always the, once you have a win, do you feel like you can kind of back up? Do you feel less aggressive? But game 1, I think we're going to come out there and try to set something. So yeah, Bucks 6 or 7. That's my call.
All right, I have mine written down. I'm going to force you to choose. Is it 6 games or 7 games?
With Giannis being out, I'm going to have to say 7 games.
I said the same thing. Bucks and 7. Yeah, I think it's a tough series out the gate, which we haven't really, a lot of these first round series have been against the Bulls, or that's really all I can remember. The Bulls. And then last year we lost to the Heat. But yeah, this isn't a Bulls series. I think this is a tough series we got to take seriously. And yeah, I think it might take 7 games.
And, that's the thing for all the listeners. That's okay. Like, the goal is to win the series. It's not to win in a certain number of games. Again, we've talked about this before. As much as everybody wants all this stuff to happen, all you have to do is win the series to move on. So if it takes 7 games, it takes 7 games.
That's right. All right. Looking at other playoff matchups outside of the Bucks, is there one playoff series that you're most looking forward to? I can run through them if you need me to.
No, I'm torn between 2. I really think the Philly Knicks series is going to be pretty great. I'm very excited to see that. I just think it's the rivals. I think they both have a lot going for them in different ways. I wish Randall could be there to see just how that would impact the matchup with Embiid. But I think I'd be, I don't know, remiss to not say Denver versus the Lakers. That's just got to be the one that people are going to be looking at. It's just, how old is LeBron? Does he still have enough to be playing? How good is Anthony Davis? Is Denver as great as everybody's built them up to be? Denver's won a single ring. I double checked that 3 times because in the number of podcasts and articles I've read, I really thought Denver must have won, 6 or 7 by now, because the way that they've been talking about on how, people have never seen a team this good, and Jokic has never been there's never been a player better than him. They still have only won 1.
They're the 2 seed also, not the 1 seed.
Yeah. So, it's going to be a fun matchup. It'd be interesting to see how that is. I was really kind of hoping for an Oklahoma City Golden State matchup, just because the youth versus the old guys, just to see how that matched up. I thought that would be interesting. And, I think the Celtics potentially going up against Miami could be good, but with Butler, maybe who knows what his health is. It's just not as good as it used to be. So, long answer, but I'm going to say Denver, LA. I think it's just the obvious pick here, and I'm just going to go with that one. How about you?
Yeah, the Denver Lakers game. I kind of wanted the Lakers to lose the first play-in game, and then win, just to see Lakers OKC, because I think I would have picked. I don't know if I would have picked the Lakers, but I think the Lakers would have a really good chance against OKC just with that matchup. And if, just as an example, the Bucks, not the last time, but the previous time we played OKC, we just annihilated them in the paint, and we just went like bully ball. And that's what the Lakers could do. So I was pretty curious about that. With the Lakers matching up against Denver, I just don't think they can do it. I think Denver's going to win in 5 games, I'd say. But still, yeah, LeBron, AD, it's still definitely interesting to see what's going to happen there. But yeah, I think Denver's too good. Yeah, the one I'd say the Sixers and the Knicks is probably the one I most anticipate. If I had to pick one series that I could watch and I couldn't watch any other series, I would probably say Knicks Sixers. I think that's just going to be a battle every night. See what Brunson can do. He's been awesome all season. He was awesome in the playoffs when he's been in the playoffs. So that should be a really fun series.
Did you hear that the Team USA didn't want Brunson to play? Apparently, I don't understand that. Like,
yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, I'm like liking Brunson more and more because it's like, what does this guy got to prove? So like, you can't even get him on the Olympics. Like, the guy's like amazing. Like, he's just really. I don't understand it. I thought that was just too funny.
Well, I think part of it is they have the old guys. They have like Steph on there, which it was fine. I'm fine with Steph being on there, but is he one of the top 4 point guards? I'm not sure. Drew, they have Drew Holiday, which to me that does make sense just for the defensive side of it. Like, do you just want like the 4 best offensive point guards, or do you want a guy who's going to be a defensive guy? So I looked at that, and initially I was like, how is Brunson not on here? But you got Steph, Halliburton, Drew, and I think I'm forgetting one guy. It was tough competition. It's tough competition, and I think Drew doesn't belong there, with the exception of he brings something that no one else is bringing, and I definitely think you want that. And also in the previous Olympics, Drew was a star in that Olympics. He was pretty important to the team. In the championship, whatever they call that, the World Championship, I don't know, like 2 years ago, Brunson was not that great, and Halliburton was awesome. And so I'm pretty sure that's why Halliburton is on there instead of Brunson, because he proved it in the international play.
I could see that, yeah.
So yeah, I looked at the roster and I was like, I guess I can't complain, but my initial reaction was like, holy cow, how is he not on the team? And Kawhi Leonard is, I guess, probably the last one that's going to be picked. It's not official yet, though. Paul George is not on the team. Yeah, there's some good players who are not on there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the goal is to get the best players that we can offer, and so there are people that are going to be missed along the way. So,
and they're all
playing. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, Brunson has been having a great year, but I mean, Dallas didn't want him. They kind of let him walk.
Yeah.
So they saw some things that maybe others didn't, and maybe he just found the right fit. I mean, look at a lot of different players will go to the right fit and they do well, and then they leave, and then it's just not the same thing. I mean, Amari Stoudemire was really good in Phoenix, went to the Knicks and was amazing for like a year, and then just was hurt, and kind of just that was the end of it. But maybe Brunson just found his role and what he's doing and found the right team. But yeah, I think he nailed it with the initial reaction is the one that you got just like, oh, it's kind of odd. But yeah, maybe it makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, we kind of got on a tangent here with the Olympic team, but the other thing is everyone's playing. In past years, certain guys would sit, especially in the World Championship or whatever that's called. A number of guys like don't play that. So then you can go down the list and you got your 20th to 25th best American players are in there. Like Paolo Banchero. He's not going to be on the team. So he'll probably be on Italy's team, I guess. That was like a whole story in that year or two ago. Yeah, so I can't think of a guy who's choosing not to play this year. So that we do have our best. But in looking at that roster, like we should win. America should win the gold medal. But hopefully Jokic plays. Like that's going to be a lot of fun. If Jokic plays and if Doncic plays, if all the best players play, like the Olympics is getting like more and more intriguing. It used to be like, obviously America's going to win. If they don't, it's a disaster. It wasn't even worth watching basically. But yeah, now it's compelling. So, all right. Let's finish this up with getting our picks for who's coming out of the East, who's coming out of the West, and who's going to be the NBA champion this year.
Well, I'm not gonna go against the Bucks. I just can't. I mean, I think that we've touched on some points. Their starting lineup is too good. Yeah, this is a Bucks podcast, so why would I not pick them? I'm not going into this like some people being like the season's been a failure and it's just not going to happen. I do have a lot of confidence that they can put it together. We've talked about before, the majority of the team has won a championship. The vets that are on there know their role. You add Damian Lillard, who's been able to push teams on his own. So I feel like it's going to work, and I'm not going to back down from that. Bucks are coming out of the East, and they're going to play the Denver Nuggets, only because the Denver Nuggets just seem to be a complete team at this point. I had Oklahoma City penciled in at one point. I thought that maybe their youth and inexperience might be to their favor. Kind of one of the things I touched on before is, are we starting to see a new NBA where it's all about, and it sounds weird to say, this more athletic tone versus the more calculating player, I guess that might be part of it, because that's part of what we're seeing. I also think that Minnesota has something. I think, year one of the Rudy Gobert experiment was a complete disaster, and now he is back to being an absolute stud in for the defense. And then Anthony Edwards just looks like the real deal. So, I wanted to cop out and say one of those top three teams is going to be coming out of the West, but I went with Denver. Again, I kind of, dogged on them a little bit because it just, everybody's written them up to be the champion already. But, they're a good team. And I think we talked about a couple episodes ago, that is the series I want to see. I want to see Giannis and Jokic going toe to toe. So that's going to be my finals. And then obviously Bucks in 6.
Obviously. If it's Bucks Denver, I would pick Bucks. I would pick Bucks in 6, actually. I really like the matchup, even with Jokic there. I just think the Bucks match up pretty well against Denver. I will not be a homer, though. I'm going to pick Boston. I hate the Celtics.
Boo, boo.
But it's hard not to, if I'm trying to be objective, it's hard not to pick Boston looking at some of these stats. Like their net rating, even just you go month by month, it's like, plus 10 every month or whatever. It's just like they didn't slow down all season. Their net rating is way higher than anybody else in the NBA. It's just some of the stats looking at Boston, it's kind of ridiculous, and it's kind of hard to see a team like that not make it to the finals. I really hope they lose to the Miami Heat in round 1, but I'm going to pick them. I'm going to pick them to get to the finals, but I can't pick them to win. I just can't pick Boston to win. I also think Denver is a better matchup against Boston. So I'm picking Denver out of the West, Boston out of the East. Denver over Boston. I'm going to say it'll go 7. I don't know. Again, all those numbers just make me give too much respect for Boston. At the same time, I'm not going to pick them to win. So I wrote it down. Bucks over Denver in 6 from Brett. And I'm saying Denver over Boston in 7. So I hope you are correct.
I hope so too. I'm, for all the fans out there, I'm just surprised that you hate the Bucks as much as you do. That was a big surprise. But you're the one that sets to live with yourself, and Boston Seth, as we like to call him, is all in on the Celtics now.
That's right. I'll end with a quick stat here. The Bucks last year, which we were awesome, right? Everyone thought we were going to at least go to the finals. The Bucks last year were 13th in offensive rating. 13th. The Bucks are 6th in offensive rating this year. So that was a surprise, and maybe some optimism, even though our defense is much worse rating wise. Excited for the playoffs. We'll get a couple games under our belt before we meet again. Until then, subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you listen to. Give us a review. Email us at doubledribblebucks@gmail.com. Follow us at podddb on Twitter. also known as X. And until then, go Bucks.